Hello and welcome to my first episode of my new podcast that I've decided to create, Moosecast. Now, this is kind of, I wouldn't say directly spurred on by E3. I was planning on doing this for a while, but obviously E3 has given a lot of things to talk about. I was following all 4 days. It took quite some time coming home from work, seeing the stream, because over here in Australia, it comes out in like early hours of the morning, like 1 or 3 a.m. So I'd go to work, come back, watch the stream, see what's good. Took a lot of notes, and I sort of compiled. Now that it's over, I've compiled all of the games that has interested me sort of across the 4 days and things that really stood out. There's a lot more that I am interested in, but I haven't included because there's just so much to talk about. I'm going to have to break it up a little bit. We're talking about, a good maybe a third of them that I wrote down, or a third of them that really stood out to me. I'm going to be sort of breaking it up across episodes. So the first thing I want to talk about, and this happened like fairly early on day one, was Tribes of Midgard. I'm a super fan of that style of game, of sort of like building up your sort of resources in that sort of way, like a Command and Conquer type game. That's what it kind of looks like to me. And obviously it's got that Norse theme, which I'm also kind of a fan of. I'm not too sure if it's going to be that Command and Conquer type game, or it's just more story based, but you're still sort of building up your sort of town and going along that vein. I'm going to have to sort of keep track of it to see more trailer footage, see more what the gameplay is like, because I think they showed us a lot of what the style is, but not a lot of the gameplay. So that's something that I'm going to be keeping track of moving forward. July 27th. So we've still got a bit over a month, do we? Where are we at? Yeah, a bit over a month. Sort of like a month and a half before that comes out. But I definitely want to jump on it and try it out. The next one that caught my eye was Tiny Tina's Wonderland. It's also both these games are by Gearbox Entertainment, I believe. I wasn't too sure if this had like a Borderlands tie-in. I think they showed it close to the Borderlands trailer. I think it directly followed. I'm not sure if it is sort of a spin-off in that universe. But regardless, Tiny Tina's Wonderland, action RPG, looter shooter. Don't play a lot of them, but again, I'm not opposed to playing anything pretty much. I'm down to play just about any style of game. The style of the game, the visuals, it looked really good, like really good. No fixed date, but they said early next year it's gonna come out. As I say, it looks fantastic. And then there's this freaking unicorn called Butt Stallion, and you get to ride it apparently. And there's also in the trailer you riding a dragon or something like that. So it just looks really good. There wasn't a lot of like direct gameplay footage. So again, you kind of have to take it with what you're seeing with a grain of salt. It's not going to be exactly the same, but it definitely achieves the role of getting you hyped, because the character models look great. The sort of creature designs look great. If that sort of translates to what the game is actually like, then that's definitely something I'll be playing. The next couple I wanted to talk about, they're both sort of, I think, going to be space exploration games. But again, we didn't get a lot of gameplay. It was more just very vague displays of the game. It's Starfield, which a lot of people were hyped for. I don't think I was as hyped as other people seem to be. Like I was watching the stream and the sort of hosts were really hyping it up and saying, "Oh yeah, I hope we get some Starfield footage." It was just sort of, it kind of tells you that it's going to be like a space RPG kind of thing. And I looked into it a bit, and I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what it seems like it's going to be. You know, it looks okay. Again, there wasn't a lot to look at. It was just sort of vague space shots, and then they take off, and with this really inspiring message. There wasn't too much to it, but it comes out 11th and 11th 2022. So it seems like they have a fixed date for that. And then one of the reasons why I marked it down is because I know someone I know's birthday is on that day specifically. So I'm marking this down. It could easily be a birthday present I give them. But I'm hoping more trailer footage, more trailers down the line, give us a better indicator of what the game is about and what you can do. I'm sure they will, but because this is a fairly early trailer, I would imagine. But keep tabs on it. Keep tabs on it. The other one was Outer Worlds 2. Pretty much the same as Starfield in terms of not a lot of indication given by the trailer. I'd say it's a very similar game, just on outset, looking at the two trailers. But, well, similar. They're obviously going to be a different story and different characters. You can already tell that by two trailers. But, again, in more of a space exploration kind of. I'm not sure if this one's going to be an RPG, but it does seem to focus around the main character, so it could be. And it's a funny trailer to watch because they're very self-aware and sort of breaking the fourth wall kind of trailer. I might include like all the links to the trailers, just if you need like a refresher, because there are so many trailers to work through. It's kind of crazy, but yeah, it was kind of funny. I mean, it sort of sticks in my mind because it is like a funny trailer. It sort of stands out from the others in that way. So that's kind of how I'm determining like what games I'm going to talk about. Like E3's over. What can I actually remember the trailer for? In all the slew of trailers and gameplay footage we got, what can I actually remember seeing? And yeah, that's definitely one of them. This one, I'm super hyped for. Icarus. And the reason I hope for it is because I played a lot of Rust back in the day. And it looks really good. It looks amazing. And in the moment I saw the trailer, I was like, is this like a Rust 2.0? Because it does look a bit better than Rust. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's kind of like a open world sort of survival game where you sort of build up, you collect resources, you build sort of a base. There's a bit of PvE in terms of like just battling sort of NPCs and sort of animals in the wild, but there's also PvP because you play it on a server with a bunch of other people. So there's a bit of both. It's a great mix of sort of ideas, and it looks great. And it looks like, again, in the trailer there was sort of a spaceship taking off, so if they're adding in that sort of space exploration element, that'd be kind of crazy. I'm wondering how they are going to differentiate it from Rust, because other than like graphical differences, it looks very, very similar in concept to Rust. Which, again, the reason why I wrote down Icarus, I'm super hyped for it. I love that game. I don't play it so much anymore, but I played Legacy a lot, and I sort of went into an alpha build, and I played that still for a good while, still like early into its alpha. I played it a lot, and then it wasn't so much that I didn't even like the game at that point. It was just sort of, I think I just moved on to something else. because I sunk like thousands of hours into that game. But yeah, super excited for Icarus. Another one that the hosts really hyped up, and I kind of got behind as well. It was Back for Blood. It, I'm not a big FPS player, I'm not gonna lie, but despite that, it still has me a little bit hyped for the game. If I'm gonna play an FPS, this could easily be something that sort of gets me into that genre. It looks like you're battling back zombies, so sort of like an FPS co-op zombie shooter. Great creature designs for the zombies. Obviously, a zombie game, that's going to be a big part of your game. Definitely, I think they look great. I think they look really cool. I guess not. It's sort of what looks good and what doesn't can be very subjective, but I think it looks great. Again, I'll try and throw the trailer down in the description. Yeah, if the reason why I don't really play FPS games all that often is because my aim isn't that great. But I'm hoping that there's still something that I can get out of the game. Definitely willing to try it. So there's a bunch more games I want to talk about, but I don't want to sort of throw it all at you all at once because it might get a little bit tedious, a little bit boring. I'm going to sort of be breaking it up through episodes. A couple other things I wanted to talk about, just gaming related, is the Shadowverse, which is a CCG. I'm a huge CCG fan. It's probably my favorite genre of game because I kind of like that strategy card game element. And the Shadowverse is going to be is coming to Switch. I almost forgot about that game. It's been ages since I played it. I think it's a similar situation to that and Rust. Is I definitely played it quite a bit, but I just sort of stopped and moved on to a different game. Not because I didn't like it, but because I just wanted to try out something else. Maybe something else had me excited. But now it's sort of fresher in my memory, I might get back into it again. It definitely has a really interesting sort of evolution mechanic that can make for some interesting gameplay. That's for sure. I was what was I? I played a lot of Swordcraft, so the budget aggro Swordcraft, I believe. But again, it has been quite a while. But if you're a fan of like card games, definitely give it a shot. It being portable is obviously gonna, I reckon, make it a little bit more popular. I think they want that sort of boost in numbers, and this, I think it will do it. Putting it on the Switch will definitely do it for Shadowverse. Another game that I played a lot, and it's a franchise that I love in terms of Switch ports, Danganronpa. Or Danganronpa. I never can quite pronounce it correctly, but I played it a lot. My first experience isn't actually me playing it. I watched a lot of someone else play it, and they got me into the game. They played through the first one, and so that I was sort of following with them, just watching them play it. And then I picked it up. I played the second one first, and then I went back to the first one. But because of that, the second one, Goodbye Despair, that's my favorite in the franchise. I have not played V3. I have seen some other people play it. I think, in my opinion, the twist at the end just doesn't hold up to the twists in the first two games. And obviously, another reason I'm a fan of the second one, I think the characters, it's like the, if I were to rank them, I would go 2, 1, and 3. 2 has a great twist at the end, just like the original did, but I think the characters in number 2 are a lot stronger than in the first one. But kudos to the first one for sort of being the first in the franchise, still having a great twist, a really cool concept. The third one had great characters, but not a very good twist. I didn't like the ending, sort of the final trial kind of thing, and how much it dragged on. In the first two, I didn't mind it dragged, but in the third one, it felt a little bit too much, and I didn't really like the twist. Anyway, I'm just sort of rambling about Danganronpa and like reviewing all the games. No, that I could go on for ages and ages about them, but they're coming to Switch. Definitely gonna probably give it a replay. I might give V3 a shot because I haven't actually played it myself. I've seen a lot of gameplay of it, and I sort of know what the twist at the end is. But I might give it another chance now that it's sort of fresh in my memory again. That's what the Shadowverse and Danganronpa are coming to Switch. They're sort of refreshing my memory of those games. So easily could pick them up again. But there's going to be so many games, dude. There's so many games I want to play right now. It's kind of crazy. That's it for like E3 content for now. As I say, I'm going to discuss more games that I still have written down in subsequent episodes of this podcast. So I hope you stick around and let me know like what you're hyped for from E3. I do think that the Nintendo section, they definitely gave us a lot. Well, I say a lot. They gave us quite a bit, and there are definitely some titles in there that I was excited for. But considering, and I sort of checked it, they have like their 5-hour segment, and like half an hour, 40 minutes of that was gameplay. So it was like 4 hours of just interviews and panels and they showed us some gameplay as well, to be fair, but I was hoping for sort of more title releases than that and a greater percentage of their runtime dedicated to new releases and stuff like that. Turned out not to be the case. But oh well. Another thing I want to talk about is, and another passion I have, not just gaming, not just E3, but movies. So I have been watching, and I decided to put myself through some very bad movies. I decided that's what I'm looking for. Subject myself to some very bad movies. So if you're familiar with I Hate Everything, the YouTube channel, they have a series called Search for the Worst. And so I decided to have a look at that list, watch everything that is currently on the list. I think it's 70 or 71 movies at the moment. Give them a watch for myself and see if I agree with sort of how they've ranked them. And it's just sort of a bit of a fun time. Watching a lot of bad movies, getting to make fun of them. And just seeing like my personal tastes compared to someone else's is also kind of fun. I'm already noticing that through the movies I have worked through, I do sort of rank them a little bit differently. Obviously, they're all bad, and some of them are just bad. Some of them are laughably bad. Some of them are not that bad, in my opinion. That I don't think they really. I don't think I would have put it on the search for the worst of all time, but the first movie and the one at the very bottom, I started from the bottom up. So the one at the very bottom is Disaster Movie. Is bad. It is very, very bad. So there's a lot of movies like it, like Disaster Movie, Epic Movie, which is also on the Search for the Worst list. They're all sort of just jam-packed with super cringy movie references and sort of a very, very thinly veiled plot sort of mixed in there. It's like 90% references, 10% plot at best. At best. And it's very, very boring to watch. Some of it starts to go into the territory of laughably bad, but most of the time, it's just bad. However, he ranks Disaster Movie at the lowest, and I didn't quite agree with that. In my opinion, with these movies, it's quite easy to get bogged down in just references, whereas, and I'm gonna sort of go into further detail when I talk about the other movies that are similar to it, but this one compared to the others, it does have characters that you know what they want. Like, you get introduced to characters, and when the sort of plot conflict comes into play, you know what they want to do, you know what they are sort of striving for. There is an end point, and you can see it from the start of the movie, or the start of the conflict, I should say. And it obviously from there it gets bogged down with reference after reference after reference after reference. But there is that at the very least, whereas some of these other ones, and I'm talking specifically about epic movie, it's the same thing. It gets bogged down, it's boring, references, blah blah blah, it's awful. But there's like characters in there, and like I don't even know what they want. I don't know why they are where they are or what they want to achieve. Um, so I think the plot of that is so much weaker because these characters are just sort of rolling with the punches, and I'm never sure where this is supposed to be going because no character really shows us what they want out of the story. After, like, what are their motivations, that kind of thing. So that's why I kind of rate Disaster Movie. I rate it 1 out of 10. But when you're splitting hairs between a bunch of movies that are all 1 out of 10, you kind of got to look at that and say that because of the characters, and at least some of the characters have clear motivations, and it just takes forever and ever and ever to realize them, I rated it a little bit higher than some of the other movies. So the second to last, I believe, let me just check that. So again, starting from the bottom up, where are we at? Yeah, so the next one was Psycho Shark. Oh boy. Oh boy. That was also bad. I should mention I sort of took notes as I was watching some of these movies, or I just sort of, while I watched it and it was fresh in my mind, I sort of, yeah, took some notes, did a bit of a summary of like my thoughts and feelings on it, and I have a Google Doc on all the movies I've watched. So if you want to be spoiled or you just want a shorter recap of it, I'll have that Google Doc linked in the description. But Psycho Shark, I can see what they were going for, and I definitely give them points for trying. Again, I think it's a lot better than some of the other movies because it has, you know where the story is going. So spoilers, obviously, for all those movies, if you ever want to watch it. It's about these two Japanese women who go to a trip to, I think it's Okinawa, which is like a really small island, like south of Japan, I think it is. So it's a small sort of beach area. They go there. It's supposed to be like a Jaws ripoff, and they're there. The plot is sort of, there was another group that was there before them. There's 4 other women. They all got murdered and sort of sacrificed to the shark. It seems that way, and it's sort of like implied that this has been going on for a while. And what's his name? Kenji. Kenji is kind of someone there who sort of drives them into town and sort of orchestrates it. So that's the premise, and it's sort of like a horror movie in that sense. They go there, they eventually discover what happened to the group before them. One of the women is sort of falling in love with Kenji, and there's sort of a bit of a romance there. And the best friend is sort of going down the rabbit hole of viewing these videotapes that were left behind that showed what happened to the other group. And so there's supposed to be a bit of tension there. It wasn't very well executed. they definitely sort of underreacted when they realized, oh, Kenji's clearly a part of this. I shouldn't let my friend go off alone with him. She does, and then she dies. Oh, does she die? No, she doesn't die yet, but they sort of get there's sort of a confrontation on this dock, and then the shark just a comically bad CGI shark just comes out of the water, and it's huge, and then it eats them, I guess. It's it's kind of laughing bad at times. It's laughing bad. The reason why I rate it like really low is some of the editing is so grating and it just hurts to watch. Like there's constant sort of cuts where it's just static. Like every time they like look at a camera or stop looking at the camera or they need to cut and transition to a different scene, it's just like really awful camera cuts, and it just made me really annoyed to sit and watch the movie because of how much of a sort of earsaw it was. But other than that, I don't think it was. It's definitely not the worst thing I've ever seen, but it definitely was kind of boring. Like when it started to pick up towards the end, it wasn't as bad, but the build up is super boring. They just stand around and do nothing for a lot of the time. There's just a lot of shots, reused shots. Like they show you, you know, one character moving, they're running, and then they stop, and then they go back to, like, for example, Kenji. This was in a sort of climax of the movie. They switch to Kenji, switch to her, and it's like the same shot they showed. Switch to Kenji, switch back to her, and it's the exact same shot. It's just so super cringy. But yeah, I rated it 1 out of 10. Where did I actually place it? Okay, it's not at the very bottom. I rated it above Disaster Movie just because. Another thing I should mention, the two female sort of leads. One thing I did notice was it might just be me not really understanding sort of Japanese inflection and language and dialogue and all that thing, but it seemed like they had sort of a believable friendship there, which is something that you don't get in a lot of these sort of Z tier movies. Just sort of actual sort of believable friendships and dialogue and all that kind of thing. It wasn't great. I'm not saying it was fantastic, but it was something that could be seen as believable. Yeah. Yeah. So Psycho Shark 1 out of 10, Disaster Movie 1 out of 10, Psycho Shark a little bit lower, but neither Psycho Shark or Disaster Movie I rated it as the worst out of the movies on the IHE list. There's a couple of other stickers to go. I think there's one more that I wanted to talk about. Where we at? Oh, there was another one that was that I thought was like this last one. I thought was super harmless. It's called Moses, Egypt's Great Prince, and it's definitely a knockoff movie, a sort of retelling of the Moses story. But I'm pretty sure there's like another animated movie that this is knocking off pretty directly. But I didn't think this was even that bad. It was. It's not obviously not as good as the film it's knocking off. The animation isn't as good, but I just thought it was sort of a inoffensive retelling of the Moses story and like the revolution and taking these people out of Egypt. I just sort of rated it 3 out of 10. It was kind of not middle of the road, a bit worse than middle of the road, but some of the songs were not too bad. There's like a dog companion for Moses and like a cat companion for Ramses. I didn't like when they were sort of this sort of competitive between them, like the competition between them and the sort of bickering that they had. That was kind of boring, but it doesn't go for very long. It didn't feel grating like Psycho Shock did to watch. It didn't feel like it dragged on forever. It was just sort of a quick animated movie. It wasn't that bad. I rated it 3. There's definitely a lot more shit movies on that list, so does it have like a ranking? Yeah, so it is of the movies I've seen, it is near the top. I've currently seen 11 movies, I should say. So it's sort of near the top of sort of an 11 movie list at the moment. So I'm 11 movies to 71 movies. It's gonna take me a while to get through them, but that's sort of where I'm at the moment. If you want things spoiled, I'm gonna go more in depth with my thoughts on the movie in these podcasts, but there's always just that quick summary in the Google Doc if that's sort of more what you're interested in, and if you want to see where I'm placing them. But with that being said, thank you for listening. We talked about a lot of games, talked about a few movies. There's still a lot of movies that I've watched, so for now that's going to be sort of a recurring theme. I'm going to talk about some games from E3 that I'm particularly interested in. I'm going to talk about some search for the worst movies that I've watched and sort of give my take on them. But E3 has so much content. Like, I'm hoping that you guys were as hyped for E3 as I was. There's so much content from there that I'm hyped for, and so much to talk about. So this is episode 1. Let me know your thoughts on games from E3. Let me know your thoughts on, if you're familiar with IHE, sort of some movies you've watched from that list, and sort of your take on them as well. That'd be fun to hear. And I'll see you in the next episode.